Welcome to the Online Success Journey podcast, your opportunity to discover and learn from entrepreneurs like yourself. This is not your typical podcast, but a place where you can get the real story and find out how real people encounter speed bumps and detours, but journey through to find success. Now here's your host for the Online Success Journey podcast, Patience.
Hello everyone and welcome to Online Success Journey. This is episode 12. Are you ready to join the clan? Today we have Corey Porier. Corey is Corey has taken the wisdom of thousands of thought leaders, so you don't have to, and he has interviewed 3,000 of the world high achievers. His most recent book, Thriving, has been grabbed by thousands upon thousands just weeks after its release. He's a multiple-time best-selling author, 8 books, top-rated radio show host, TEDx speaker, and a professional speaker. Also a retired stand-up comedian. Hello, Corey.
Hello, Patience. How are you doing today?
I'm fine.
Excellent. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for coming. I know the clan here is anxious to hear your story, so let's get started with the basics. Can you tell my clan a little bit about your background, about what you did before you started your online business? Take us right up to the last job or business before you were an author, a radio show host, professional speaker, and a stand-up comedian.
Well, absolutely. So I guess I won't go too far back, but I was raised by a single mother. I started performing stand-up comedy. You mentioned stand-up, and that really relates to, I guess, my last job. So I started performing stand-up comedy in 2002, and right around the same time, I was working in the what we'll call the office products business, so selling photocopiers door to door, and that was essentially my last business before I went into business for myself. But most of my career up until that point, I spent in what we'll call corporate sales. And, some of that involved business to business. It was mostly all business to business sales, but it was essentially door to door business to business sales. So, not for the faint at heart, but also a really good life lesson in what it takes to run your own business. Because when you're selling, of course, you're dealing with rejection every single minute of the day.
Mm-hmm. That's a great background, Corey. So help us connect with you. Tell us one thing, either a business or a personal, that we want to know about you, even if we have been following you for a while.
Well, I would say perhaps that I guess one of the things that people wouldn't expect is that I have a struggle stepping outside my own comfort zone on a regular basis. So, when people see me do things like stand-up comedy or jumping out of a plane or even running, my own business and speaking on the stage, I mean, those are typically speaking some of the biggest fears in the world. And I guess the thing people wouldn't realize, but it's important for them to know about me, is that I don't find that easy. I mean, it takes work, and I have to take action and convince myself to take that action, in spite of the fact that inside I would probably rather just stay inside my comfort zone and my shell and not do it in the first place. So probably that, like everybody else, I have the same major fear. It's just that I force myself to do it anyway.
Wow, we wouldn't expect it from that, from you. Corey, you said in your book that you first read your first book at the age of 27. What was so special about that book, or why did you all of a sudden start getting interested in reading books at the age of 27?
Well, I will say that I tackled and tried to read books before that. In school, we're told specific books, these 3 that I was told that I didn't, because reading wasn't my thing. So for instance, a lot of people would have heard of the book To Kill a Mockingbird. Also, Lord of the Flies would be another one. Death of a Salesman. Those books I was told in school I had to read and write a report on, and I found ways out of it. I think even one I may have failed the test because of it, but I didn't. I just couldn't get into reading. And then after school, I tried to read Cujo by Stephen King. And a lot of people would think I stopped because it was too scary, but the truth is it just didn't pull me in. So I did admittedly try to read books, and it just didn't do it for me. But at 27, what happened was my mother bought me this book by a guy named Dale Carnegie called How to Win Friends and Influence People. And she bought it, at a flea market for a quarter, gave it to me when I was going on this retreat. And I took the book on the retreat with me, not expecting to read it. But one of my coworkers started reading it first and told me, you got to check out this book. And I started reading, and I guess the easy answer to why I kept reading is because it pulled me in and it never let me go. In fact, I started reading it a second time because I had no other books to read. And this is from a person who had never read a book fully in his life. And what the difference was, so why that book? It was because Dale Carnegie had an amazing ability to storytell. Rather than just give facts and figures or just quote stuff, he actually had the innate ability to storytell and tell you stories that pulled you in and never let you go. And that book is pretty much story to story, cover to cover. So that was the reason why that book. And then since that time, I've continued and read, I would say, on most months, I would probably average 2 to 5 books a month.
Wow. Your book is called Thriving. How did you come up with that name?
Well, that's a really interesting question, because originally the book wasn't supposed to be called Thriving. And if you would have asked me a month before it was released, I still would have said it wasn't going to be called Thriving. The catalyst for the book actually was I kept hearing people say that they were overwhelmed and couldn't keep up. So the original title for the book was Overwhelmed. And it was essentially what I've learned after interviewing so many enlightened superachievers about how to get ahead and not be overwhelmed and get more done in the day. But the editor, in fact, as she was editing it, said to me, Corey, this book needs to be called something else, because it's so much more than just what you originally planned it as. It's so much more than just lessons for how to beat the overwhelm. It's about how to thrive even above and beyond that. So first it's getting productive and beat over. But once you've done that, this book, she said, gives you a tip for how to thrive beyond. So it needs, she didn't say the title should be Thriving. She just said it should be something different than Overwhelmed. And so Thriving had been in the back of my mind for a follow-up book. So, since she had read the book multiple times, I said, what do you think of Thriving? And she said, that's the title right there. She said, I know, as soon as I hear it, that's it. So that's how the title came about. Was, in fact, it was meant to be the next book. It certainly wasn't meant to be the book that people are reading now, but it really came down to the fact that the book ended up becoming more than what it was meant to. And the idea was to help people thrive and eventually be thriving.
Wow. What a journey. Okay. People tend to think the sunshine always shine because you are successful now. Did you have any setbacks or failures while setting up your business, or what was those setbacks, if you have any?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I still have setbacks regularly. So, what I would say is there's a myth about running your own business and being an entrepreneur that, like you said, the flowers bloom every morning, the sun is always shining, and you set your own hours. You don't have to work unless you want to. There's less work to do, et cetera, et cetera. And the truth is, it couldn't be further, from that. The difference is that if you're passionate about it, which most entrepreneurs are, then you love what you do, so you're willing to deal with the bad because you want to have the good. The good's so much better than doing something you hate that you're willing to deal with the bad. But to answer the question about setbacks, I would say I would go back to my very first business, which was, and I kind of went back, visited it because I wasn't happy with the way that it ended. But my first business was a business publication. So a printed publication, similar to your clan might know about Success Magazine. So similar to Success Magazine, where we were sharing stories and business wisdom and lessons from various entrepreneurs who were quite successful. So I would go out and interview those entrepreneurs and then shared it in a printed publication. I ran that for a year, or close to a year. And what I realized near the end of that year is that I had set up the business with a limited cash flow. It was definitely, there was a lack of funding in the business. And so what happened was I was at a crossroads of, do I continue to do the business to the point where it's going to be bankrupt, or do I walk away and move across the country and start a new journey and career? And I ultimately made the decision to close the business properly and move across the country, start a different career. And then a number of years later, because I felt I never closed the pages on that paper properly, I relaunched and had a successful paper that I ran from 2007 till today. And for the better part of 6 of those years, it was ran as a monthly publication. So I was able to go back and kind of, if you will, get revenge on my earlier failure. But the answer is that was definitely a setback, because I never expected at that age that would happen. I never expected that I would struggle in business so much whenever I thought that it would automatically come to me. So that would be probably one of my bigger setbacks.
Okay. Regarding that setback, what emotion did you experience? Did you feel, what did you feel? What did you describe it to your friends and closest family? Did you really share what happened to your business with your family?
I didn't share it like I perhaps would today or should have. But the reason I didn't share it is because it didn't feel well. And maybe that was the benefit of me choosing to let the business go rather than it choosing to let me go and bankrupting the business, is that I could take the approach, which was legitimate, that I chose to close the doors and make this big move for myself. So that's kind of what I shared with family, but I didn't really share the trials and tribulations and challenges of really feeling like I had failed the business. So I didn't share it at the time. I've shared it, of course, since. And I guess that was, that was what it felt like. It felt like a failure. It felt like, I wondered if I could even cut it in business. It just felt like, wow, maybe this isn't for me. And so I didn't share it in that way. I basically shared it as I made the decision to move away from the business because, and this part was true, I felt that business being in a small town might typecast me, and it might be the end of what I do. It might be the biggest thing I ever did. So part of me did want to move away to see what else was out there, but the other part knew that the business wasn't going to survive unless I found a way to bring in a major cash flow. So I didn't share it then, but really the feeling was, I guess, a feeling of failure.
Oh, but at least you succeeded at last. So why this book and why now? You have written in 8 books, so why this 8? Why is this the book now?
Well, and there is a difference between this book and the rest, and this is my first ebook. So this is the first book I started as a digital book first rather than a traditional book. And so I guess why that side of it now is because I feel in a lot of ways, and that this doesn't mean I'm going to move away from traditional publishing, but I do feel like the way the market is going, we can't ignore the power of digital books right now and the desire for people to read digital books. So the reason why digital book now is because I feel that's where the market is going. In terms of why this thriving book right now, it's because I feel people are maxed, they're overwhelmed, they're having a struggle to get ahead. They're struggling with, how do I reach that top 1%? So these are the pains I find people are having. And my goal with the book, because I had the benefit and good fortune of interviewing, well, right now I'm over 3,000 super achievers, I felt I had a unique insight, similar to what what Napoleon Hill with Think and Grow Rich did, almost 100 years ago. I had a unique position where I could actually figure out and determine and share what the top achievers have in common, and maybe help people from a grassroots level start to get ahead and not be so overwhelmed. So I guess it was partly because the challenge I see people having, and then the reason for a digital book first is because it seems to be that's the way people are reading now, and I didn't want to ignore that.
Okay. How can we remain efficient in an efficient all-consuming world?
Wow, that's a big question because, of course, as you know, the book, which is over 130 pages, attempts to answer that in those 130 pages. And so I provide just in the book 5 keys, and I even provide a bonus key for how to do that. So what I'll say is that, if I had to pick one thing, because it'd be hard to, of course, go through all 5 and do them any service. So if I had to pick, one of the most notable things, outside of finding and following your passion, because I'd say probably a lot of your clan is already doing that. I mean, that's the key #1 trait. But if I say outside of that, what should a person do if they want to remain efficient? They have to learn to start saying no more often than yes, and that's a really hard transition for the average person. So they have to learn to start saying no more. And then how do they say no? Because this is maybe more important. It's easy for me to just drop an insight and say you got to say no. But if a person doesn't know how to do it, I'm not leaving them with much value. So what I would add is that they have to actually figure out what their purpose and mission is. What are the things that they want to achieve? Where are they heading towards? And then once they know that and they're crystal clear about that, then they can actually figure out what is the yes and what is a no. So to give you an example on that, I share with people the five components of my, let's say, mission statement or mission statement or a purpose statement is that I want to be the guy who donates, motivates, inspires, educates, and entertains. And so whenever something comes to me, like a task or a thing I should be doing that day or something somebody asked me to do, what I do is I do a test and I put it against those things and say, how many of these is it going to hit? So, is it going to be, am I going to be educating by doing this? Am I going to be motivating? Am I going to be inspiring? Am I going to be donating? So what I'll do is if it's three or more of those, then it's probably an easy yes that I'll never regret. If it's, one or less, it's probably really going to be a no, or I'm going to regret it. And then if it's in the middle, then I just take a little longer to decide, is this a yes or no, and I do a pro and con. But really it comes back to, what is my goal? What is my purpose? What is my mission? And once you know that, then it's a matter of starting to say no to the things that don't align with where you want to go and yes to the things that do. So if I had to give one strategy for being efficient, it'd be knowing what to say no to and knowing how to say yes to. And for me, at least, that's the approach I take for doing so.
Wow. Okay, I know my client would love to hear how you overcome this thing of the failure, being a failure. And we are going to talk much more about this in our extended interview. But just to tempt us for later, Corey, how did you make it through?
Really, I guess it came down to me learning that, failure is not the end of the journey. I mean, I was kind of raised and taught, like most people, to fear the unknown, to fear rejection, to fear failure. So it's quite easy, if you've been sort of built up that way, to believe that failure is the end of the road. Like, this is, you're done. This one situation is the end. But what I realized, mainly because I kept on pursuing things and started to realize that I'd have a success and then a failure and then a success. So it was the realization that failure isn't the end of the journey, and that you still have a chance to have a do-over, if you will.
So what is your focus or your specialty online?
My focus?
Yes.
My main focus right now, you mean?
Yes.
My main focus right now is, ironically, to continue to take my business online. So I, of course, spend a lot of my time throughout the year as a keynote and motivational speaker. And the challenge with that is it involves traveling, in my case, hundreds of days a year. So I guess my goal at 40 now, almost, I've been doing this road and traveling for a number of years. Let's put it at around 15 years. And so my goal is to start traveling quite a bit less, and my route to doing that is continue to bring business more and more online. I have our radio show, which has sponsors, and so I can theoretically say that is definitely an online business earning a revenue. But I want to continue to launch more and more programs online so that I can do what I'm doing, reach a similar or larger number of people, but maybe travel a bit less. But I will add that you'll never see me not travel at all, because I still love the travel. I just would like to maybe be doing less of it.
Okay. My clan is a group of hungry entrepreneurs looking to move their business forward. How can your expertise help my clan?
Well, I would say, the easy answer, patience, and this is, of course, sounds like maybe a cheap plug for the book. It's not intended to be, but I guess an easy answer would be, if they grab a copy of the book, then that's probably a good starting point, because I really, poured thousands of hours of research, thousands of interviews, of wisdom and knowledge and insight, and sifted through a lot of the stuff. So, poured thousands of hours of researched wisdom into the book. So, that's a good starting point. But if and I don't want to ever leave somebody thinking that I'm trying to push a book. So, if I said, how can I tell them to take those next steps? I really think that people need to get back to the fundamentals once again. I feel that we've jumped into a world of shiny objects, and we need to get away from that world. We need to start saying, what are the key things that have always worked? There's a reason why Dale Carnegie's, again, I said Dale Carnegie. I'm a fan of Dale Carnegie and Napoleon Hill. Those are my two top books. So Napoleon Hill's book, I should say, there's a reason why it's still selling millions of copies a year. And it's because the wisdom he shares in it, the steps that he shares for becoming getting rich, and this is not just money-wise, but getting rich in your life, these insights and fundamentals still work today, just like they did in 1936. So and there's a reason the book keeps getting picked up. It's because people realize that. So I think we need to get back to those fundamentals. What are the things that have always worked since the beginning of time, like collaboration, masterminds, focusing on what you're strong at, lifelong learning, so finding ways to continue to grow and develop your mind. Like I mentioned, a newer one now is probably saying no a little more because technology has changed our demands. So I really think it's getting back to the fundamentals, learning what they are if you don't know, and then focusing on them rather than trying to constantly look for a new software, new technology, a new online resource that can take you in a different direction.
Okay. Would this book of yours help us like smoother, like if we read it, we can just go out there and start applying those principles, like if I read it today?
Yeah, that's how it's designed. What I will say, and this has been a really important thing to me, is once I learned what these super achievers are doing differently, or at least have in common, what I noticed is none of these things are things you have to go to school for. You have to have a certain background, that you have to have a certain level of income, come from a certain family. It doesn't matter who you are, what your background is, where you come from. All of these traits that I share, both in the book and in my talks and actually in interviews, all of them you can start from scratch and start applying them in 5 minutes. I mean, as an example, being all in is one of the common traits I noticed. So being able to focus on the task at hand. Well, you can start tomorrow or today. As soon as you hear this knowledge, you can start turning off your phone or leaving it in the car and focusing on the person in front of you rather than being distracted by the phone. Or I mentioned lifelong learning. Well, you can pick up a book starting today. But if you're not a reader, even, you have options now today you didn't have when I started. So you can actually listen to a podcast. You can listen to a show like this. You can watch a TED Talk, a video. So you can actually do a lot of things starting tomorrow that we talk about in the book that it doesn't matter where you're at today. You can make the change starting tomorrow. And finding your passion might take some time, but in the book I help people start that process. So, starting the journey of finding their passion, they can take that step starting 5 minutes from now.
Okay. Was it easy for you to become an author, as you have written 8 books so far?
Well, I guess it wasn't originally or necessarily my goal. As I mentioned, I hadn't read a book until I was 27. The irony of that is that when I was early 20s or late teens, I thought I want to be an author, and it was kind of funny when I thought about it after, because I thought I want to be an author and write books, yet I haven't read one. So that's kind of a backwards approach. But at the same time, no, it was definitely not a goal to become an author. And I guess you could say my introduction to writing, I write music, write stand-up comedy, those type of things. I guess writing side, it's something I always had in me. But in terms of where it started, I launched that first newspaper I mentioned, and for lack of not having another choice or a different path, I realized that we had to become the writers because there wasn't enough freelance writers to fill the paper. So we had to become writers and learn by experience. In school, I got maybe 80s in English, so B level probably, but I definitely didn't have a great grasp of grammar in general. So I had to start from scratch, making a lot of mistakes in the public eye with my publication and newspaper in the process of writing. But what happened was I fell in love with writing. I sort of learned as I went. I started learning the ins and outs of grammar. I started really self-educating when it came to grammar and English. And then I kind of got a taste for it, and had people giving feedback on the stories they were reading and the articles they were reading. And then that just kept evolving until eventually it turned into blogs, and then finally it turned into books. And I guess you could say now it's just another one of my passions.
Wow. Okay, where do we find this fantastic book?
Well, the best way to find it for your listeners would be to go to thisisthebook.com. So that's the website. Thisisthebook.com. And when they get there, it asks for a passcode. So the passcode that they need to know is, and this is all one word, but Thrive Now. So like the book's name is Thriving. Well, this is Thrive Now, and that's all one word, capitalized. If they enter that as the passcode, then essentially what will happen is they'll get an email right away. They just confirm on that email that they want the book, and it'll be on its way to them immediately.
Okay. Chalene, Corey is going to hang out and share more information about his journey with us. If you can relate to where Corey started his travels so far, or if you just want to learn more about Corey, you can listen to the extended version of his journey at onlinesuccessjourney.com. If you are listening at the journey, click on part 2 of Corey's journey and you will get more tips and to help you with your own online journey. Remember, you can go to onlinesuccessjourney.com for more information and about the membership and all our future podcasts. So check out Corey's book called The Thriving at thisisthebook.com. Passcode Thrive Now. And you'll be having the book in no time. So we have more information. If you are not the part of the clan, you should be. Go to onlinesuccessjourney.com. And as I told, this is not a typical podcast, but a place where you'll get real people with real stories from failure to success and all our future podcasts. So again, don't forget Corey's book called Thriving at thisisthebook.com. Passcode Thrive Now. That's a wrap, clan. Remember, success is a journey. See you in part 2. Patience and Corey.
This is not the end of the journey. We hope you've enjoyed listening to part 1 and want to be sure you know there is a second part to this and every journey podcast at onlinesuccessjourney.com, filled with even more success tips, uplifting stories, and even a bit of fun. There are dozens of episodes only available to the members of the Online Success Journey clan. Check out the website and click on Join the Clan for more information. Patience would like to thank you for listening to this podcast, and she has a free audio gift for you at her website. Go to onlinesuccessjourney.com for instant access to this gift. Of course, you know that listening to the journeys of others helps us chart our own path. So make sure you're subscribed to be notified as each new interview is posted. There are so many ways to stay connected to the online success journey and to listen in. And if you're enjoying the podcast, we appreciate your help in telling others. One of the best ways to share the benefit you get is to rate and review it at Stitcher and other sites by clicking the stars or completing the ratings form, by clicking thumbs up and leaving a comment on YouTube, or liking and sharing the podcast on social media. To review the podcast within iTunes, simply open iTunes to the podcast, click on Ratings and Reviews, then write a review. On behalf of Patience, and until next time, thanks once more for listening. It is our hope that this podcast will guide you on your own online success journey.